It feels like every year the Minnesota Golden Gophers are an overlooked team that's automatically in a sleeper category. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that people think that they can also win the conference, but this is the team that I think gets a lot of disrespect year in and year out. I think that people look at Minnesota and think, well, this is just not going to be a contender, and they find a way to surprise people. This year is going to be an interesting year for PJ Fleck and his team. And we take a deep dive into the Gophers to see what we should expect in 2025. Now, the 2024 season was full of exciting things. I think that an 8-5 finish was a great season for Minnesota, especially with some of the changes that we saw and the schedule that they faced. And this year will be no different. You just have some big names that depart and some new faces that are going to step up. I think Greg Harbaugh Jr. being the coordinator was a really fun revelation for this team. You saw what he's capable of doing. And then you saw Corey Heatherman's defense do a lot of good things. Heatherman's off to Miami, so you bring in Danny Collins to run the show. That's going to be an interesting side. He has plenty of talent to utilize on that side of the football. We'll see what he can do. We'll see what his defense looks like. And we'll obviously dive into the players that are coming back that are really exciting. Now, there's plenty of turnover on this roster. There's plenty of turnover year in and year out for Minnesota. They do produce a number of talented players to the NFL. Ariante Ursary was one of those names. The offensive line also takes hits with Tyler Cooper and Quinn Carroll leaving. Max Brosmer was always going to be that short-term player at quarterback. You knew that he was only going to be here a short period of time, so you weren't obviously devastated to see him leave, but he did a lot of good things for Minnesota. I think that we have to give him credit for what he did. He was a fun contributor on the offense and a surprise to a lot of people who definitely didn't know what he could do. You lose Daniel Jackson to the NFL. Tyler Williams was a promising young player that goes to USF. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Ja Joyner, Danny Strigo, and Justin Wally are big names that you'll probably miss. But you did a good job of bringing in talent, or PJ Fleck did a good job of bringing in guys that are going to replace them, whether that's on a one-to-one basis or be part of a collective that does that. Now, nobody's replacing Ursary, but you do bring in some players like Marcellus Marshall, Dylan Ray, Khalid Tafai. Those are three guys that we'll talk about more in depth here in a little bit. You did address that need. You also address the need of depth at running back by bringing in AJ Turner. You bring in wide receivers like Malachi Coleman, Javon Tracy, Logan Loya. Those are guys that I think are set to have a major role in this offense. The defense also sees an influx of talent as well, though you don't feel like you need a ton. You just needed maybe some depth pieces. Though Jeff Roberson's going to be a really fun player to watch. John Nestor coming in from Iowa. You have guys that will start and be part of that rotation in a major way. It's just going to come down to how much will they play for this team. We'll start with the offense. The quarterback position every single year for Minnesota is a point of concern for times, and I think this year there's maybe a little bit more anxiety with the uncertainty in Drake Lindsey's game. Now, there's a lot to like about his game. He's 6'5", 230 pounds, has a really good frame to him, and stuck with Minnesota in a transfer portal era where you could have saw him leave. You know, you brought in Max Brosmer last year, and Drake Lindsey probably could have thought that he was going to be the guy until you see a transfer come in and take your spot and decide, oh, I want to go somewhere else. He stays. He waits it out. He learns a lot from Max Brosmer, and now he gets a chance to show what he can do. Now, it's going to kind of look weird. I think that in the past, when you look at the Tanner Morgans, the Max Brosmer, you see guys that maybe don't remind you of a quarterback traditionally, or really, if you're looking at college football, I think a lot of people are like, well, my quarterback needs to be 6'4", 220, 215, 6'5", Drake Lindsey is the first time in a while that we've seen a quarterback from Minnesota, and you're like, okay, that looks like a really good guy. That looks like a really promising player. And now you get a chance to showcase what he can do. I think the arm talent is definitely there, and the passing attack is going to be a big question until further notice. And that's just natural when you have a new quarterback taking over. You don't know what you're going to get from him, and he has some new players that he has to find chemistry with. Behind him, you bring in an experienced player in Emmett Moorhead. You had Zach Bryan coming in before he transferred out. Dylan Wicke is another guy that could be part of it, but I think that the highest ceiling of this group is with Drake Lindsey. Now, Drake Lindsey is someone that this staff really likes. They think that he has a tremendous career ahead of him, and we get a chance to see that. Now, it's probably going to be tough early on. I think that any new quarterback coming into the Big Ten will need to shake off some rust and shake off some of those nerves. Fortunately for Minnesota, they have a relatively easier schedule at the beginning that we'll talk about here in a little bit that might help him get acclimated. Now, the players that you bring in from the portal do make that a little bit easier as well. So it's just going to come down to the chemistry he has with those guys. The depth behind him, though, you probably don't feel as good about that, but you don't really want to worry about that yet. The rushing attack should be really good. Darius Taylor is one of the more underrated running backs in college football, though that bandwagon is filling up quite quickly. 986 yards and 10 touchdowns as a rusher. He also was a big part of the passing attack, caught 54 passes for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. A good average both running and receiving. You also bring in AJ Turner from Marshall. Now, Turner had a monster year for Marshall in terms of explosive plays. He averaged 8.3 yards per carry last year, had 6 touchdowns. He was also a little bit of a contributor in the passing attack, though not as much. You'd like to see both of these guys run the ball more, obviously, and not be part of the passing attack. I think that will be the case this year. They're not going to throw the running backs as much this year because of the talent that they have coming back. You also bring in Cam Davis from Washington. I think that Cam Davis, despite his numbers last year, is a solid depth piece. He will definitely get carries this year. After that is probably where you have guys that need to develop, but you have 3 good guys in this rushing attack that will be a part of this offense and be a major contributor to the success of this team, because this is a team that offensively wasn't great last year, but they have the ability to be. A lot of that hinges on Drake Lindsey. Obviously, a lot of that is if they can run the football, which if they're going to run the football better this year, that opens up the offense. That also takes off a lot of pressure from Lindsey, your new quarterback that you're having running this system. And if he is able to see some of that relief, you feel like you're in a good place to improve as a whole offensively. Now, the guys that Lindsey will throw to look a little bit different, though there are a couple players that we'll talk about that are returning that will make an impact. You bring in Javon Tracy. The staff really likes what they've seen from him in the spring. 818 yards and 7 touchdowns for Miami of Ohio. You also bring in Logan Loya. I think there was a lot of hype surrounding Logan Loya's route running. He could be kind of that Daniel Jackson of this group. We'll see what happens there, but he is someone that has a lot of ability to create separation and make those throws easier for Drake Lindsey. That's a guy that he may not take the top off of defense, but he is someone that's going to get open and give Drake Lindsey a guy that if there's pressure or he's feeling rushed, he might look his way and feel confident that Loya is going to be open. Lemeki Brockington takes on a new role. He returns as well. 18 catches last year, 282 yards, 15.7 yards per catch, and 1 touchdown. You also bring in a returner group of promising players and bring in a guy like Malachi Coleman. Only played 1 game last year, didn't play very well, but I think that you're looking at a player who has the ability to be a game changer. In 2023, you saw some flashes of that when he averaged 17.4 yards per catch, but he's looking to take a step forward. He's looking to be more of a contributor. Maybe a guy like Daniel Hayes or Christian Driver, whose name should be familiar for a lot of people. Those are guys that are looking to step up as well. You're looking at a rotation that has the potential to be great. It's just going to come down to who will get open consistently and how will Drake Lindsey develop chemistry with them. It's on them just as much as it is on Lindsey, but you feel pretty good and it feels like it's a promising group. You're just waiting to see who's going to be that wide receiver 1 or who's going to be that safety net for Lindsey to find downfield. Now, another name to keep an eye on is Jalen Smith. The staff really likes his development. They're really excited about what he can do. He's another player that should push for time, should push for catches, and has the ability to make some big time plays. Tight ends have played a valuable role in this offense as well. I think that you're going to see a number of players contribute at the tight end position, and Jamison Gears is going to be one of those guys. 6'5", 255 pounds, had a number of big catches last year for the Gophers. I think that he is ready to take on a bigger role. 290 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. And when you look at Minnesota in the past, they've had some really good tight ends. They've sent tight ends to the NFL draft. I'm not saying Jamison Gears is going to be in that role, but he is someone that could be. He could be a bigger contributor. He could be a player that opens things up for the passing attack in 2025. Frank Bierman's another guy that could do that as well. Drew Biber comes in from Purdue to make a good depth rotation as well. So you have options, and this is an offense that use multiple tight end sets. So you're expecting more of the same from them in 2025. You have plenty of options. I think right now you probably have concerns about those options' ability to turn their potential into production. But overall, you should feel pretty good if you're a Minnesota fan. You have players that can step up and make those big plays. You don't have a Daniel Jackson, but you have a guy that could be him in Logan Loya. Not saying he's going to be the exact same thing, but he is someone that could step up. Javon Tracy has already done really good things. Lemeki Brockington is familiar with this offense and knows how to make those plays. Some of the younger guys we talked about, Hayes and Driver are two of them. Same with Jalen Smith. Those are guys that eventually they have to take a step. And if one or multiple of them can take steps, this passing attack goes to a different level that we haven't seen in a while. And I think everybody compares the passing attack to the 2019 team. It's not going to be the 2019 team. I don't know if Minnesota will ever get back to that. I don't know. I hope they do, but for now, you're going to have to temper those expectations. Now, could you be a top 50 passing attack? Could you be a top 40 passing attack? That's really where this team could take a step and be better in the win column, is if they're able to make those small improvements. Those are going to be things that they have to do. Finding balance would be the biggest key. And the guys up front obviously are going to dictate that. And you have a ton of new faces. And I think I saw Ryan Burns of 24/7 Sports said that in a way, it's like they have 5 new starters in the offensive line. Now, Greg Johnson and Ashton Beers are back, but it sounds like they're going to play different positions. Greg Johnson was the center last year. Ashton Beers was a guard. They're flipping. You have 2 guys that are comfortable in those roles, but they're going to flip for now. They feel like they're in a good position there. They feel like they found the right positions for both of them. We talked about Marcellus Marshall. That's a guy who can play both guard and tackle. He'll probably be the starting right guard as of right now. Very experienced player that comes from UCF and Kent State before that. Dylan Ray played center for Kentucky. He's going to slide out to tackle. And he can also play guards. You have a guy who can play multiple positions, and that's why the depth chart here is pretty much more of the same names. Because you have players that can play multiple positions, that puts you in a good position that if one of them goes down, you can slide one of them in and put someone else there. Now, you're going to see the left tackle position be up for grabs. Khalid Tafai is going to be one of those guys that probably steps up right away. Nathan Roy is another name to keep an eye on. I think they're really excited about what he can do. And again, he is someone that if they need to move people around, you insert Nathan Roy and see what he can do. Another guy to keep an eye on is Tony Nelson. Tony Nelson played in 10 games last year for the Gophers. He is someone that could be a big contributor. He is someone that could take a step forward if you need him to. Jaden Ball is an interesting player from Purdue. I don't know how much he'll be part of the rotation, but he is someone that could be part of that rotation. He is someone who can contribute and has good size to compete in the Big Ten. Other than that, I think maybe you have questions about quality depth, but overall, I think that bringing in guys that play multiple positions, guys that are looking to compete at the high level and maybe didn't get that opportunity last year for various reasons, whether it's they're on a bad team, they're on a team that just didn't give them opportunities. Now they get a chance to do that. And this is a veteran group that has plenty of experience. It's just going to come down to, can they bring this team to another level? You have a new quarterback that has to get familiar with a new center. You have a quarterback that is hoping to have time to throw and wide receivers that need to gel with their quarterback. You also have a rushing attack that should be one of the best in college football. All of that starts up front, though. If this group can be as good as advertised, you're looking at a team that is going to take a step and be a very exciting team that overachieves this year and exceeds expectations. Again, people sleep on Minnesota every single year, and it's understandable why they do that, but it's a great place for Minnesota to be in. A lot of people are expecting them to be in the middle towards the bottom of the conference. When you look at any of the preseason magazines, everybody is putting Minnesota lower than they probably will finish. And that's exactly where PJ Fleck and his staff are comfortable. They know that people are overlooking them. They know that people are underrating them. They get a chance to prove that. And they don't want that any other way. They want the ability to prove people wrong. They want the ability to exceed expectations. And that's exactly where this team wants to be. And that's exactly the mindset that they want their team to have. The defense is going to be kind of the same with that. They do lose a number of big pieces on the defensive side of the ball. Losing Ja Joyner and Danny Strigo that was always going to hurt. You also lose Cody Lindenberg, Justin Wally, Ethan Robinson, Jack Henderson. You lose a number of players that will make life a little bit more challenging. That being said, I think you have some players that are ready to take steps in their progression, steps in their development, and steps in their production. Anthony Smith is going to be one of those guys. And he was a good player last year. An honorable mention all Big Ten selection, 12 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, great NFL size at 6'6", 285 pounds. He maybe isn't your traditional defensive end that can get around the edge quickly, but he has the power, he has the strength, and he has a burst that can do that occasionally. I'm curious to see if he can do that more consistently. They also have rotated him on defensive line to defensive tackle in various situations. So I'm curious to see what Danny Collins will do with the defensive line. Now his scheme is going to look a little bit different, more of a 4-3 look, but I'm curious to see how this defense thrives. Devin Eastern is another guy that comes back. Same with Jalen Logan Redding. So Smith and those two are going to play bigger roles this year. And were very good contributors for this defense in 2024. Now they get a chance to showcase that they can be larger contributors in a defense that probably takes a little bit of a step back, or at least needs some time to get acclimated with each other. The position opposite of Anthony Smith is probably where you have the question of who's going to be that guy. There's a lot of excitement surrounding Jackson Howard's game. Didn't play a ton last year, but they feel really good about what he could do for them in 2025. A very explosive, very twitchy player that can get around the edge and be a great complement to Anthony Smith. Whoever plays opposite of Anthony Smith is going to have a lot of great opportunities. They're going to get a lot of one-on-one looks. They're going to get opportunities to show off their talent. So if it's Jackson Howard, if it's a guy like Steven Curtis who comes in from Illinois State, very productive year for him, he is someone that could step up as well. You're going to see both of them. It's just going to be who's going to be the more consistent player. If Jackson Howard lives up to his potential, he is going to be a monster for this defense. And Anthony Smith is already a problem. You're just looking for guys that can be helpful to him, can be good complements. Lucas Finnessy is going to be another guy that could play a role as well. You're going to use multiple guys. In college football, you need multiple defensive linemen at the end positions, at the tackle positions. It's just going to come down to who are those guys that step up. We know who one of the starters will be on the edge. It's just going to come down to who are the depth pieces that will contribute as well. The tackle position is in a little bit of different spot. You have solid depth. It's just new depth to your roster. Rushawn Lawrence comes in from Stony Brook after a productive year, 11.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. So he could be part of that. Mo Amande comes in from Purdue. There's a number of Purdue transfers coming to Minnesota. So you have guys that are ready to either take a step up to the level of competition or now are joining a team that is better than what they were before. In terms of what Amande comes in from Purdue. Nate Becker's another guy that could be a depth piece as well. But if you're looking for this group to fall off the rails, you're probably going to be mistaken. This is not a group that is going to take a huge step back, if any. They have the right pieces in place. They have the playmakers, and a lot of that is culture. The culture that PJ Fleck has instilled is a group, and this is really where Minnesota's had success, a group that plays together. Yes, we're talking about individuals here, but when Minnesota is playing really well, it's because nobody's trying to be a star. Nobody is trying to be better than everybody else. They're just trying to do their job as best they can. Now, naturally, you're going to get stars that emerge. We're going to talk about a big one here in the secondary, but this is a group that plays for each other, plays well as a unit, and that's how they have to win. This is not a team that can play with an Ohio State or an Oregon or a Penn State if they play like they're individuals. But that's a group that is going to be tough as nails and arguably one of the tougher teams to beat if they're playing together. And the defense is the perfect embodiment of that, and it starts up front. The linebackers will also play that role as well. Maverick Baranowski and Devin Williams know what it takes to win at Minnesota. They know what this defense has to be. There's certain things that in a world of NIL where everybody's worried about guys leaving for the transfer portal for more money and guys trying to just worry about themselves, there are little things that Minnesota does that not a lot of programs do. And it's not just like one or two guys. The whole, like when it gets to fourth down and everybody puts their fists up. When I say everybody, I mean literally everybody. That's something you just don't see anymore. And that's probably like a old person take, like a boomer take, where it's just, well, they don't do things how they used to. Those are little things that PJ Fleck makes this team do to buy in. That's how he gets them to buy into this program. These are the things that we're going to do to be successful. And that helps you when you see your teammate getting excited that you got to stop on third down and you're participating in that. I'm a firm believer that there's more buy-in. There's better play because of that. You see your teammates getting excited, and the linebackers are the leader of that group. Baranowski was a productive player for them. Now he takes on a more of a leadership role. Devin Williams was part of the rotation last year. Now he's going to be a full-time starter. You bring in Jeff Roberson from Oklahoma State. I think he could have gone to a number of schools, chooses Minnesota, and gives them another good starter to be in this 4-3 defense. The depth behind them maybe is a little bit of question, but you're excited about what Matt Kingsbury can do. Joey Gerlach is another guy that could step up that had experience last year. And then there's a freshman in Emmanuel Carmo that could step in right away and play. There's probably some concerns at depth, which means younger guys will have to step up. That being said, there's talent to make this group really exciting. And again, it's not about what they can do individually. They do have to do their jobs individually, but how do they play with their teammates? How do they read, oh, this defensive lineman is going to go this way, so that means I have this gap. Oh, this guy missed his assignment. I have to make up for it, and I'm going to do my part. This is a group that plays really well collectively as a unit, and that's how they win football games. That's how they surprise people, is playing as a team. And I know that sounds cliche, but that's how Minnesota wins football games. That's how they surprise people. Now, the secondary is kind of a different story. And this is where we get to the stardom. And we'll just go right into it right now. I don't know where this team plans on playing Coy Parrish, but I do know they have options. They put him at nickel last year. They put him at safety. Put him wherever you want. As long as he's on the field, he is going to make an impact. You also have him potentially being a contributor on offense. There's been some rumors about that. He's wearing the 2 different colored jerseys in spring practice. Everybody, I think, is trying to do the Travis Hunter thing. I don't know if Coy Parrish is actually going to do that. I think that just adds more reps to his frame, and you're maybe asking for too much of him. But everybody's trying to do it now because of Travis Hunter, and Coy Parrish did it in high school, but doing it in the Big Ten is a much different story. His abilities as a returner, though, is kind of why they at least experimented with it and maybe even use it. He is someone that can make plays. You put the football in his hands. He has good hands. He's a ball hawk, 5 interceptions last year, and he is someone that is going to potentially be a superstar on a team that doesn't have a ton, but has really good players. And the nice thing is, Coy could have gone anywhere he wanted. Any team would have taken him in a heartbeat, but he chose to stay at home. He chose Minnesota, and he's bought into the culture. Especially after last year, you could have thought, oh, this guy's going to have an ego. He's a first team all Big 10 selection. He is someone that had a monster year, and now he's just going to start thinking of himself. Coy Parrish is not that kid. Coy Parrish is going to be a contributor. He is going to work with his teammates, and he gets excited for his teammates. When you look at last year, at the peak of Coy Parrish, when you looked at his teammates making plays, he was one of the first players over there congratulating his teammates. So if you think that he has an ego, you're wrong. Guys like Kerry Brown and Aiden Gooseby are going to take the safety positions, but Parrish could rotate in with them as well, depending on what they need. Now, the nickelback position is a little bit more uncertain, so maybe that's why Parrish is there. But Jayonte McMillan could also play a role in that position. He had pretty good experience last year. He's looking to take a step. If you need to put Parrish at safety, McMillan's a guy that will step in and play nickel. John Nestor comes in at corner. He'll push a guy like Zaquan Ryan and Jalen Bowden. Those are two guys that are looking to be more contributors this year. Ryan had good experience. Bowden comes in from North Carolina Central. He is someone that is looking to take that step. Nestor knows what it takes to compete in the Big Ten. So that's a nice depth piece to have. After those guys, though, is where maybe the production drops off and you maybe have more concerns. But overall, this is a group that's going to play well collectively, and you have the right pieces in place to get some of those inexperienced guys or those new faces to where you want them to be. And that's really exciting. If you're a Minnesota fan, that's really exciting for this group as a whole. And like I said, that defense, they might take a step back, but it's not going to be a big one. And that's still going to be a really fun group, which then leads us to their record. You have a new quarterback, you have a new offensive line, you have some new pieces on defense. That could lead to some struggles early on. Fortunately for Minnesota, the schedule isn't terrible. Over under is 7.5. I think the ceiling for this group is 10-2. I think the floor is 6-6, but 6-6 is everything's going wrong. Yes, the Big Ten is competitive, but Minnesota is in a good place. PJ Fleck has done a great job of building his culture where you don't see a ton of regression, or you don't see as drastic of a regression if there is one. You start the year with Buffalo and Northwestern State. That's a 2-0 start. Cal is going through a ton of changes. And yes, it's a road trip. That's probably going to be a difficult one. It feels like Minnesota has those random games that give them trouble. That could be a tough game, but that's a winnable game. Then you get a bye week before, honestly, a tougher stretch. Hosting Rutgers, a team that you lost to last year, you're looking to bounce back. That's going to be a game they're motivated for. Then you take a trip to Ohio State. Now, one thing is Ohio State's probably winning that game. I don't think that there's anybody in their right mind that truly thinks Minnesota will win that game. I didn't say can, but will. That's a really good Ohio State team. Watching this secondary against Jeremiah Smith is going to be really fun. But I think Minnesota plays them tougher than a lot of people realize. If they're playing really well collectively, that's going to be a tough game. Then you get Purdue. That's a team that's going through a new coaching change. They have a ton of new players. That should be a win for Minnesota. Then you get Nebraska. Nebraska is a team that is looking to take a huge step in 2025. It's at home, so that's huge. That will be a really exciting game, especially if Minnesota only has one loss coming into that game. October 18th will be electric if you have a one-loss Minnesota team facing off against a up-and-coming or potentially good Nebraska team. We'll see what happens there, but that has the potential to be really exciting as well. Then you go to Iowa. That's a tough one. To win at Iowa is always going to be tough, and Iowa is going to be a good team in 2025 again. Michigan State's another team. There's a lot of teams in the Big Ten, honestly, that are looking to bounce back in a big way. Michigan State is looking to get to a bowl game, so that's going to be tough as well, though it is at home. Then you go for a bye week before you go to Oregon and at Northwestern, which are two different challenges in vastly different ways. Then you get a home versus Wisconsin. So the home schedule is great. The road schedule, not so much. The game against Cal is tough. The trip to Ohio State will be tough as well. Beating Iowa is always going to be a challenge. And then Oregon and another team, Ohio State and Oregon, two teams that want to make it back to the college football playoff. Those are going to be tough road tests. But again, 10-2 is definitely a possibility with this team. A lot of that hinges on Drake Lindsey, but I think that he has the tools and has the pieces in place to make that happen. If anything, we get to watch some really talented players from Minnesota put on a show. Coy Parrish is one of them. Anthony Smith, Darius Taylor. You have a number of guys that are continually underrated, guys that aren't going to get a ton of love. Coy Parrish is probably the exception to that, but you have players that are ready to prove their worth, ready to take steps, and ready to almost make people talk about them because that's how well they're playing. And if that is the case, Minnesota is going to be one of the more exciting teams to watch in 2025.